Good morning, one and all present here. On behalf of Karamveer Bhaurav Patil College Vashi, I, Manvinder Riyad, welcome you all on the occasion of 7th International Yoga Day. I heartily welcome our today's guest speaker, Dr. Harish Mehta. I also welcome Ms. Abhirami from Heartful Tree. Yoga is originated from India. It is a physical, mental, and spiritual practice. Including yoga in everyday life is one of the healthiest practices we can ever make, as it not only makes us physically fit but also calms our mind and soul. In this pandemic period, we all have understood that how important it is to keep ourselves positive and relaxed, and we can achieve this by daily practice of yoga. Today we have invited an eminent speaker, Dr. Harish Mehta, to enlighten us about the connection of yoga and heart. And we all are eager to listen to you, sir. Hence, without taking much time, I request our beloved principal, Dr. Shubha Nayak, to brief about our college and its long association with heartfulness. Thank you. Thank you, Manvinder.
Good morning, all. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all on this very bright, sunny, and very precious morning. First of all, to begin with, I give you very best wishes for this International Yoga Day celebration. Yoga, being the integral part of our life, is so important, and it has to be an integrated part of our life and not just for celebrating for one day. And that is the reason this comes as a reminder to us that as we eat, sleep, and exercise and work, doing yoga, not only yoga asanas, but all the Ashtanga yoga or 8 limbs of yoga have to be integrated in our life to lead a balanced and peaceful life. I'm very glad that we have a very eminent cardiologist, Dr. Harish Mehta, with us. And since he's coming to our campus, though virtually, I thought it is a good opportunity to brief him about our organization and our mother institute. So this is Karamveer Bhaurav Patil College Vashi, which belongs to Rayat Shikshan Sanstha, which is an 101-year-old Asia's largest educational institute with 735 branches all over western part of Maharashtra and 1 district of Karnataka. Of the 735, 43 are colleges, and our college, which is located in Vashi, Navi Mumbai, is one of the prominent colleges of Rayat Shikshan Sanstha. Our Rayat Shikshan Sanstha was founded by a very prominent educationist and social reformer who dedicated his entire life for upliftment of the downtrodden by taking education to their doors. And that is why you will find branches of Rayat Shikshan Sanstha even in the tiniest villages of western part of Maharashtra. This college was established in 1979, and since then it has progressed continuously. Currently, it is a very prominent college in Navi Mumbai, providing education in all the 3 streams like arts, science, and commerce, and 1 course in management as well. We have around 7,500 students and around 275 teachers and around 60 to 70 non-teaching staff here. We are located in a 5-acre area in Vashi. And NAAC, the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, has given us A+ grade after the 3rd cycle of accreditation. It is a ISO 9001-2015 certified institute and has many prestigious grants to its credit, like Department of Science and Technology, we have FEAST grant. It is Department of Biotechnology has given the status of star status to this college. acknowledging its efforts for developing scientific temperament and research capacities in undergraduate students. And we are an autonomous college, and Rashtriya Uchchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, which comes under MHRD, has given us a grant of 5 crore for bringing in excellence and quality in higher education. I think with this brief introduction about our college, I think I will not take much time of yours. And thank you so much right in the beginning for accepting our invitation and gracing this function. We all are very eager to listen to you. Over to Manvinder.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Ms. Abhirami from Heartfulness team to introduce our today's guest speaker, Dr. Harish Mehta. Over to Ms. Abhirami. Thank you.
So, hello, good morning, everyone, and wishing you all a happy International Yoga Day. So, to briefly introduce about myself, I'm Abhirami. By profession, I'm a social worker. And I'm very happy to be part of this program today. And I would like to share a small presentation about heartfulness and heartfulness wellness. Hope everyone is able to see the screen. Okay. So, to briefly introduce about Heartfulness, it's a non-profit and spiritual organization. It's a very simple, practical way to learn to how to relax, meditate, and discover the unlimited resource of the heart, which is our today's topic as well, where Dr. Harry should be taking on it. And we have presence in over 130 countries in the world. Maybe for more information, you can log on to heartfulness.org. And as I said, I'm part of Heartfulness Wellness, and I'm the program manager and program administrator. To brief you on in a very small, brief manner. So, what is Heartfulness Wellness? It is nothing but it's a focused and multi-faced approach. Nowadays, we don't only focus on physical aspects, but slowly we have started focusing on our spiritual aspects, social aspects. But it doesn't end there. What wellness is, it has all eight aspects of approaches, including occupational, social, spiritual, financial, environmental, emotional, and intellectual, apart from physical. So what is our mission or maybe vision is to widen the dimension of modern medicine and healthcare, improve interpersonal relationship with family and peers, enhances physical fitness and lifestyle, and focus on overall well-being of an individual. So these are our motto or maybe vision and mission. We have set of programs from womb to tomb, and the range of programs combining knowledge, experience, and systematic practice, which promotes balance and overall wellness at the end of the day. We have a few offerings, as I said, from womb to tomb. Few of our offerings are CME, maybe healthcare program, yoga, and family and relationships, lifestyle, and research. Maybe more than me explaining, I would like to show a small video on it. So, as I said, here are a few offerings. So, we started in 2017 with a program called Continuing Medical Education. This program is especially for healthcare professionals. Uh, Healthcare professionals includes medical students, doctors, nurse, psychologists, psychiatrists, everyone. To support their professional development of a heartful approach to their apart from their medical practice. And second program is called healthcare. Basically, this program is meant for cancer patients. So apart from their disease, we want to embrace their illness and move from disease to ease. So that's our motto. And we have family and relationship programs, which promotes harmonious relationship development for all. So if you see, there is a program called Walk to Wow. It is a program, a relationship program for the youth group, and Joy of Pregnancy for the ladies who are planning to planning for their pregnancy, or maybe they are pregnant for them. Joy of Parenting is the program for the parents, and Union of Hearts is nothing but people who are not able to conceive on a normal basis and they are facing the issues of infertility. And we have 36% of success in this program, especially. A few more like yoga programs and lifestyle changes and research. So nowadays, all the programs, whatever we are trying to inculcate wellness, we are we are trying on research as well, so that working to prove and improve. So this is what Heartfulness Wellness is. Our motto is like nurturing each individual's world is our motto. And without any delay, I would like to invite Dr. Haresh Mehta, who is the Director Cardiology of Raija Fortis Hospital, Mumbai. So Dr. Haresh is an interventional cardiologist who is currently affiliated with prominent hospitals across Mumbai. He has done his fellowship at University Hospital, Bern, Switzerland, and is also a visiting faculty at its Department of Cardiology. He is actively involved with various medical bodies and frequently giving lectures and provides demonstration of complex angioplasty techniques. He is also founder of Healing Hearts. Dr. Mehta has been practicing heartfulness meditation for past 12 years since 2007, and he is also a trainer too. Without any delay, I would like to invite Dr. Haresh.
Thank you, Abhirami.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nayak, and the entire faculty who's listening on today from this KBP college. Yesterday, I had a chat with the principal, and she told me the great amount of work that has been done in the college, and also the penetration of heartfulness is there in this center, and it's probably the first one that started heartfulness amongst colleges. So it's a pleasure to be here. And today we have a very important day. It's the International Day of Yoga. And as your principal already clearly told you, yoga is commonly misunderstood only as asanas. And that's the reason people really do not gain full benefit out of yoga. What is yoga actually? Yoga actually is a lifestyle. It's the life you live. It's the way you live your life. So it's not something you get up in the morning and do and it's over. It's not actually that. That's not yoga. That's asana, which is only one limb of the Ashtanga Yoga, which the principal alluded to. So there are 8 limbs to the Ashtanga Yoga. We won't go into detail of each limb. I'm just giving you a brief idea that yoga is union with your higher self. When I mean higher self, what do I mean? What does this higher self mean? Because it's a common problem people will face. Because we are used to identifying ourselves with the physical body. So when I tell you that it's union of myself with myself, you'll wonder what is he talking about. Higher self is something which is within you, which is something we really do not take it seriously. We base our entire life based on inputs from the outside world, and we mold our activity based on what the outside world thinks of us. And that is the commonest cause of disharmony and unhappiness amongst us. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Because if I ask all of you who are sitting there, just raise your hands. Is everyone happy? Happy all the time? 24/7, 365 days a week? How many of you are completely happy? See? It won't be possible because we have really not understood what we want in life. We keep running behind goals which are self-created, desires which are self-created, and we keep adding them every day. We keep changing the goal post every day. So if a lecturer wants to become a reader, that becomes his primary goal. And once he becomes a reader, then he starts looking at his colleague and say, why not assistant professors? And it goes on and on and on. It never ends because this is just a profession. You can talk about money, you can talk about cars, you can talk about possessions. All these things keep multiplying. And this is the commonest cause of suffering we all face in today's world. And it's universal. It's not something it comes to one individual and doesn't belong to another one. So the only way to really live a balanced life, and I mean a balanced life, a life involving your inner and outer self, should be in harmony with each other. And that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about heartfulness. Now, why are we stressing so much on the heart? I mean, all the yoga practices, meditation practices that you've been probably listening to, I'm sure some of you do practice heartfulness. They all talk about mind, say mindfulness. Someone will say meditate on your power chakra, or we call it the Virat. Someone will say concentrate on your breath. But why are we saying heart? Why are we saying heartfulness? Now, what is this heart that is so important? And I think that is the reason heartfulness chose me, because they thought I am a cardiologist, so I can give you aspects of both the physical and the spiritual heart. So is the physical and the spiritual heart the same? In a way, yes and no. A physical heart occupies a small place on the left side of the chest. And the spiritual heart encompasses the entire body. We will come to that how, and I explain that to you. I just have a quick question. How many of y'all think that heart rules our life and should rule our life, or it's the mind that should rule our life? How many of you think that the heart should rule our life? Okay. Right. Now I'm going to give you the importance, because we've always given the topmost part to the mind. We always thought that that's going to control our life and that should control our life. Now, for example, when a child is born, how does the doctor tell you that the child is born? How does he know that there is a live fetus inside you? The first thing that he notices is the heartbeat. As the first thing he tells you, that your heart of the baby is started. So the first sign of life is the heart. Now, for example, in medical terms, you've heard that donations occur, organ donations occur. How do they occur? Because in those patients, The brain is dead, but the heart is beating. So till the heart is not beating, you are not alive. You have to understand that. If the brain is dead, then only organs can be donated, because the heart is still perfusing blood to all the organs and has maintained the characteristic of the organ, despite the brain being dead. So obviously, this is one example that tells you that brain is not the control center, or actually should not be the control center. We have made it the control center. Now I'll ask you something. Does a heart have a mind of its own? Can the heart think? Just a show of hands. Can a heart think? Or it doesn't? Okay. So when you are driving down a highway and you see an accident, what's your first reaction? Go and help or go away? I'm sure most of us, the first reaction is go and help. And then you go away. Why do you go away? Now, this is where the distinction of the heart and the brain comes in. The first instinct that comes into you is generally the heart telling you that this is what you need to do, because you are a born human and your instinct is to help others, to be of assistance to others, irrespective whether you know that person or not. And the moment you start intellectualizing the situation, you start thinking whether this situation is going to be beneficial for me or not. And if you start analyzing, if I go and help that accident individual, I will spend time, I will be late to where I'm reaching, the police will ask me 10 questions, they'll call me to the police station, and then they'll involve me and I'll have to keep going there. And that's when you change your mind and you drive away. So this is a classic example of heart and a mind distinguishing each itself. Heart wants to give, heart wants to help, hearts want to be empathetic, but the mind tells it, no, that's not for you. So that's the selflessness versus selfishness. Generally, if you let your mind rule you, it will almost always take you towards your selfish aspect, and heart takes you towards selflessness. So this was one example to tell you that heart is a mind of its own, because it starts thinking, it starts analyzing, it starts giving you answers. But the unfortunate part of this hard answers is that it only barely whispers. It just tells in your ear, this is the thing to do. And if you do not do it, it will not tell you again. And this moment when the heart speaks, I call it the Buddha moment. Because that's the real time. If you listen to it, that probably changes your life. And this is just one example of why heart is more than a physical organ. Now, if I tell you that the heart is more than a physical organ, you will start telling me, what are you saying? Where is the science behind this? Because we all want evidence. We all want proof of what is happening. And it's not bad. It's good to ask questions. It's always good to, it's the same thing I'm sure you tell your students. Do you have a question? Why don't you ask a question? It's good to ask questions because it stimulates research. It stimulates interest. You don't want to take up something because I am saying so, because I'm a cardiologist. Just because I say that this is good for you, this is what you need to do, you don't have to accept that. So you have to yourself research it, experience it, and see if it helps you. If it doesn't help you, you're always free to let go of what I say or what anybody says for that matter. So what is the research behind that? Now, I told you heart has a mind of its own. So you'll ask me, prove it to me. So they have done research, lots of research. So heart, the physical heart, contains nerves which come and control it. That's something called the sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight nervous system, or a parasympathetic nervous system, calm or peace nervous system. Now, what are these two nerves? When you come across an incident which is threatening your life, for example, if you're in a jungle and a tiger comes in front of you, that's a life-threatening situation. So what do you experience that time? You experience fear. You will realize your pulse rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your heart starts pounding, your palms get sweaty, and you're generally sweating. This is the sympathetic nervous system, which helps you think fast, on your feet, and decide what to do. So that's a very important aspect of the heart's nervous system. So what you do is, at that moment when these hormones, which are called adrenaline, gets released, you quickly run away from the situation or plan an action. But the problem we humans face is, once the stress is triggered in us, once this response is triggered in us, we cannot withdraw immediately. I'll give you another example of this. If you see National Geographic Channel and you see a kill, you see a lioness chasing a wildebeest, and as soon as the wildebeest, the chase is over, after some time you will find the wildebeest and the lioness having water from the same pond next to each other. Why is that? Because the wildebeest realizes that the tigress is no longer hungry. So she is not a threat to her. So she doesn't mind being next to her. And the lioness, at the same time, doesn't care about the wildebeest because her stomach is full. But we as humans, when we trigger a response, this adrenaline response in us, for example, if you're driving down a street and someone cuts your lane, if you're driving, you are so angry at the traffic, at the driver, you start screaming. You are angry to the extent that you want to get down and slap the driver. But do we switch off? No. We go to the office, fire the staff around. You fire people around you, subordinate around you. If you're a teacher, you're going to make life miserable for your students because your adrenal drive is still continuing. Your sympathetic drive is still active. And it probably goes on for the whole day, right up to the time you go home, till you go off to sleep. And this is one thing that we have not realized to switch off. Now, this off switch is the responsibility of the parasympathetic nervous system, or the calm or the peace nervous system. In this part, the hormone that is released is acetylcholine. What it does, it reduces your heart rate, reduces your blood pressure, reduces your anxiety, reduces your sweating, and brings you to a state of peace and calm. Now, this is generally done when you run, exercise, you sit down, you're fine. But how do we do it when you're irritated and agitated? Here is where heartfulness has proven that if you meditate on your heart, and it has been shown in studies that these people who meditate on this heart have shown their heart rate, their blood pressure, the adrenaline levels dropping rapidly compared to a person who is not practicing heartfulness meditation. So that clearly gave us evidence that meditation on the heart is an effective and important tool to change the way you live, to change the way you think, to change the way your life lives. So this was one evidence that how the heart controls. The second reason, if you have ever heard, have you ever called someone who's nice to you a kind-brained person? No, right? You'll always say he's a kind-hearted person. Exactly. Third, is the brain not important? Why am I saying heart, 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 heart? Is the brain not important? Of course the brain is important. But brain is the most powerful tool given to humans, and they have probably we are the only ones who have this power of thinking and decision making and changing our life. And the heart and the brain has a connection. It's called a heart-brain connection. And most of the time, the connection is brain to the heart. So you tend to listen to the brain and ignore your heart. And that leads to distress. What meditation, heartfulness meditation does is just reverses this control. So it just teaches the heart that you are the controller and the brain has to follow the dictate of the heart. That's all you need to do. And this has been very beautifully proven in multiple studies all through the world. The heart has an electromagnetic radiation of its own. Does everybody know that? Right. Now, when you take an ECG, an electrocardiogram of a patient, where do you put the leads? Have you seen them? They put on the hands, they put on the legs, they put on the chest. Even if you keep the lead away from the patient, it will still record your heartbeat. Whereas there is something called EEG, as the electroencephalogram, which records the waves of the brain. That electrode has to be put on the head. Even if you keep it slightly off the head, it will not record. So the electromagnetic forces of the heart are stronger than the waves coming out of the brain. Has anyone ever been to a orchestra or a symphony or heard a symphony? I'm sure most of you all have done. In that, there's a band master, right? He is controlling the entire symphony. Can anyone distinguish in that symphony which player is playing better? Can anybody tell if it's a well synchronized symphony? Can anybody tell of those players which one is playing the instrument better? It's impossible, because these people are connected with the heart. They are the same kind of people having the same kind of goal. But if you have people who are so-called intellectuals, they will never have the same sound, because one will try to outdo the other. Second will try to outdo the third. And that is the commonest reason, madam, you must have seen all the working class strikes are successful. Whereas strikes of professors, teachers, doctors are never successful. Because we intellectualize everything and we want our own selfish gain. Whereas if you tell a worker or you tell a terrorist, they work just listening to their heart. They just have the same frequency. They live and vibrate on the same frequency. So they will do anything, even if their gain is nil in there. So that tells us that heart forms a major cog in our thought process, in the way we live, in the way we function. Now there's another concept about the heart. People think that those who use their heart tend to lose. They think that the world will take advantage of them. They will not rise professionally. They will not rise socially. They will not have a place on top. Do you all agree with that, or you don't agree with that? How many agree with that? That if you listen to your heart and do every time your heart says, you will end up being on the losing side or maybe on the suffering side? Let's be honest here. How many of us feel that? Most of them, can I take it for granted? Or most of them feel that living by heart, you can live normally? I'll ask the principal. She'll tell me what the people think.
Most of the time, it's a common norm. People think people will walk over me if I go by heart every time.
Right.
But in my personal experience, in last few years, it has proven the other way.
So I'm not surprised that people generally think that the people with the heart can be easily trampled upon, can be pushed around, can be manipulated. I'm giving you an example, and I want honest opinions out of you. You can just give a opinion on how you would have been in that position. So there's this student who has just given his exams, and he realizes that the seat he wants after giving his exam is eluding him by a mark. Right? He's eluding him by a mark, and he decides to wait for 6 months and reapply and see if he can get that seat. So on the last day of counseling, he goes to the counseling hall and notices that there is a vacancy in the field he wants, and he decides, why not give it a shot, and goes to meet the clerk who assigns the seats and allots the seat. So the clerk tells the student that you are second on the list. If the number 1 does not come by 5 p.m. today, which is the cutoff time, then you are eligible for the seat. So that raises his hope, and it's about noon time by then, and he hopes that nobody turns up till 5 p.m. So he's loitering around the campus, biding away his time. Around 2 p.m., he notices that person who's number 1 on the list is walking into the counseling hall. Now tell me, if you were a student, would you allow him to know that there's a seat available, or would you hide it from him and distract him so that he does not know that this seat is available? Ma'am, can you collate and tell me what would people do? Or anyone can tell me. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello. Sir, I would like to let him know and go for the counseling.
Yeah.
if he will take the admission, then it's okay. If it is in my faith, I will get it. Otherwise,
Okay.
I won't get it.
But how many of us would genuinely do that? Now we are saying because we are listening to heartfulness meditation, heartfulness speaker speaking, and then you have done some amount of heartfulness.
Yes, sir. And if, like now we know about it, so that is
No,
our thinking.
that's why I said when you were a student, that's why I put you back many years back.
Hello, sir. As we are talking from the point of view of only and only student mind, at that time, student mind sometimes becomes selfish. He's not going to think about the other, what will be the loss of other. He'll think about his own profit.
Right.
So we can say so that he can hide only because of
Right.
that
So-
he will get that post.
Yeah, I agree with you because I don't think student or non-student, we are still the same. It's just that the degree and variation happens over time and our goals change over time. So this individual decided to hide it from this guy. Because he said, he's not my friend, I don't have to tell him. So what he does, he takes that student with him and they chat around and takes him to the canteen and starts spending time with him, telling him not to, in a way, not letting him know what is happening. So this goes on till about 4 p.m. and this constant heart and brain tussle is going on in the student's mind. Should I tell him? Should I not tell him? Should I tell him? Should I not tell him? If I tell him, I'll lose the seat. If I don't tell him, I'll gain the seat. If I tell him, I'll lose the seat. If I don't tell him, I'll gain the seat. So around 4:15, 4:30, the heart wins over. And he decides to tell this guy, this seat is available. So this guy is very excited. He's getting a seat, the other fellow. And he profusely thanks him and says, thank you very much. Now the catch is, time limit is 5 p.m. By 5 p.m., you have to pay the fees. Number one has money with him, the one who was hiding it, and the one whose really getting the seat does not have money. Both are not friends. They don't know each other. They are just students. Now, should number one or would number one have given the money to number two and tell him go and take the seat? One good deed is done. Would he want to continue the second deed or would he stop here and said, I've done my job. Now he's not got money. That's his problem. How many would give money away? Because if he doesn't pay, he gets the seat back. Would you give your money away? Can I presume you won't?
Yes, sir. In this case, like if I have told that the seat is available and still he is not able to get admission, then I will take admission.
Okay. So yeah. So this student of ours finally said, no, yaar, let me listen to the heart. I'm going to give him the money also. It doesn't matter. I will give him the money because I can't live with this thought that I have deprived someone of the seat. And he gives him the money and tells him go and take it. And he's really sullen and feeling horrible, but he still does it. So they both go inside and meet the lady at the counter and she and tells her that this guy is first and he's come and he has the money and you can get the admission and I'll wait 6 months. So the lady says, wait, but I have to pull your forms out and we have to check. So they pull both the forms out. Now the person who was getting the seat, when they pull this form out, he had put different choices on what subject he wants. So his first choice was something else and his second choice was the seat he was getting. When they pulled the form of the man who was not getting a seat, they found that he had put only one choice in his form, the seat he wanted. So the person who was getting the seat had filled the form as per what he thought he will get based on his marks. And the person who really wanted the seat had put only one choice because that is exactly what he wanted to do. So he had not put any other choice around. The rule of the university says that if your first choice is available, then you cannot take your second choice. And the first choice of that person was also available. So eventually, the person who was going to take the seat was sent back and said, sorry, your first choice is available. You have to take it. And the person who gave the money and told the student about the seat got the seat back. So this is the most beautiful example of heart ruling the mind. Second, heart taking you through different routes where you feel downtrodden and you feel that you're losing. People will take advantage of you. People will push you down. But the eventual winner in the entire thing was the heart. And the third thing that came out, because he knew what he wanted, his heart was set on one subject. He had the courage to put only one subject into the form. But the other one was using his mind based on his scores, and he had put different subjects. And he was deprived of the seat. And the man who really got it back was rightfully deserving. So this example clearly told us that heart may lead you astray for a moment. Actually, it doesn't lead us astray. You feel that it leads us astray. But eventually, heart is the winner. And that is seen in the entire world. Even in the corporate world, let me tell you that. A compassionate and an empathetic colleague or a compassionate and empathetic boss is always more respected than a boss who's always abusive. Although both may get the work done, but the output generated by an empathetic and a compassionate boss, which are features of the heart, are generally more. And this is also proven in our heartfulness meditation, where we have studied two groups of individuals and given them the same job. One with heartfulness meditation, one without heartfulness meditation. The one with heartfulness meditation performs the job better, faster, and better outcomes. And better results if it's a student. If he meditates regularly, his exam results are superior to the people who don't do it. And for example, a promotion. Even if you're getting a promotion in a college, in a hospital, in a situation, wherever you are, what do the HR people look at? Do they look only at your intelligence? No. They look at your emotional quotient, your social quotient. They see how can you be accepted by people around you if I elevate to your position. So if you personally ask me, heart will always eventually be a gainer compared to the brain. I'm saying brain means brain is there in both. It is how you use your brain under the control of your heart is the way to go. According to me, that's the best way to go. I have been following this for many, many years. And it has changed my outlook to life. It has changed the way I think about life. And I'm sure that in these examples and these research, I have partially convinced you that heart is the way to go. Thank you. Do you have any questions, or we can have a little bit of meditation first and then questions?
Yes, sir, we will go with meditation first.
So, are there any newcomers whom I need to explain this meditation, or everybody has done this heartfulness meditation before?
So some are there who are little new.
Okay.
We know about heartfulness, but some colleagues are there who are new to this. Most of us know that.
Okay. So I'm just going to briefly describe how this meditation is done. And then we just have to sit and do nothing actually. The beauty of this meditation is that actually you have to do nothing. And that's the most beautiful part of this process, which I learned over time. Because the metamorphosis that occurs automatically. You really don't have to put in too much of an effort except that give your time to sit. So in this meditation, we tell the practitioner who's wanting to learn meditation that give a supposition that there is a source of divine light in your heart and close your eyes with that thought. And the moment you close your eyes, you have millions of thoughts running into your brain. And that's known, right? When we sleep at night, you have suddenly a splurge of thoughts into your brain. Now, most meditations fail because you try to fight these thoughts. In our heartfulness meditation, we do not fight the thought. We disregard the thought. It's like a school, it's like a college. You have a naughty student who keeps pestering the class by doing some mischief or throwing some object or making a noise. Normally, the reaction is to call him out, to punish him, to scold at him, or do something. And that is exactly what the student wants. He wants attention. So the moment you give him attention, his purpose is served. He's done his job. But there are some teachers who would say, let it be. I don't care what he's doing. And the moment you let it be, he will keep quiet. He will stop doing it because his purpose is not getting served. The same thing happens with thoughts. So when a thought enters your mind when you're meditating, if you think about that thought, then you create a chain of thoughts. You go to another thought, you connect a dot, you go to another thought, and you keep going behind thought and you get lost in it. Whereas if you behave to the student, ki, I don't care, who are you, I don't know you. You just tell your mind, this thought is unimportant, I'm letting it go. If it needs my importance, I'll think about it after meditation. Automatically, that thought will drop off. Another thought will replace it. Do this every time a thought replaces it. Let it go. And you will realize during your meditation, there may be a brief pause where there was a gap between the thought. And that's what meditation does. It creates a pause. So don't try to become thoughtless. Don't try to push thoughts out of your mind. Don't force yourself. These thoughts should not come. Just let it be. Okay? So that's how we meditate. And if you chase a thought, again remind yourself, I'm meditating, and come back to the heart. That's all you need to do. So I'm going to give you a set of instructions. You follow them. After that, I'll say, please start meditation. And when I'm coming to the end of meditation, I'm going to say, that's all. And the moment I say, that's all, please don't open your eyes immediately. Because what happens when you suddenly go from a cold room to a hot room? Your glasses start fogging, right? Same thing happens that when you come out of meditation and suddenly open your eyes, you're exposing your inner world to the outer world. And your inner world will get fogged, it will get clouded. So you have to give it some time, give it a few minutes, few seconds, and gently open your eyes because you will digest what you've received. And then you can open your eyes. So are we ready? Sit comfortably. And gently close your eyes. Now wriggle your toes. Feel the energy from Mother Earth entering your feet and relaxing it completely. Your feet are now light and relaxed. This healing energy goes up your ankles and your legs, relaxing your calf muscles, your legs, and the ankles. The knees are now getting light and relaxed. This energy ascends up, relaxing both the front and back of your thighs. Both your lower limbs are now light and relaxed, and they are almost feeling weightless. Your hips, your waist are now being relaxed by this healing energy. Feel yourself sinking away in your chair. This energy relaxes your abdominal and stomach area and the muscles and the organs, thereby making your breath slow, smooth, and rhythmic. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Now bring your attention to your entire back. This energy ascends up your lower back onto your upper back, relaxing each and every muscle of your back. The chest muscles are also feeling relaxed, thereby allowing your lungs to expand fully. Take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. This energy is relaxing your shoulders. Feel your shoulders simply melting away. The arms, the elbows are feeling lighter and free of tension and completely relaxed. The muscles of the forearm, the wrists, the hands, right up to the tips of the fingers are now relaxed by this healing energy. Feel the energy oozing out of your fingertips. Both your upper limbs are now light, relaxed, and feels weightless. Now gently bring your attention to your face. Feel the chin, the earlobes, the tips of the nose, the lips, and the cheeks, feeling nice, light, and relaxed. There's a small smile on your face. Your eyes, your eyelids, eyebrows, and the top of your forehead is now rid of all stress and tension. And there is no brow, no furrow on your brow. Your forehead is now completely relaxed. Feel this relaxation going right up to the top of your head and back of your head. The neck muscles are now become soft and supple. Now gently bring your attention to your heart. Feel the presence of the source of divine light illuminating your heart from within. This love and light emanating from your heart is pulling your attention into your heart. Remain drowned in this love and affection in your heart and be there for some time. Please start meditation. That's all. Keep your eyes closed for some time and make a note of how you felt. Only when you are ready to come out, gently open your eyes. How did you all feel?
Relax, sir.
Everybody felt good, or there was some who didn't? Any questions? We can take them now.
So normally, due to the hectic lifestyle,
Hmm.
the common question that comes up is, how can I take out time for meditation? Being an interventional cardiologist and having super hectic schedule, how do you manage to take time out for meditation?
Okay. So, not having time is a beautiful excuse we humans have learned to avoid things that we need to do or we should do to benefit us. If you have time to watch a movie, if you have time to read a newspaper, you have time to watch a cricket match, you have time to watch your favorite program, despite your hectic schedule, that means you have time. So it's how you mold your time, how you use your time is more important. And that's what you learn even with meditation, time management. It becomes very automatic. So what I used to do initially is that I used to meditate in my car because most of the time is wasted in your car looking out and getting angry at the traffic. And whatever you do, the time to reach the spot will never change whether you get angry or don't get angry. And I used to keep fighting with my driver. So that has stopped. So I don't look outside, I don't look at the driver. Whatever little time I have, I am either answering my mails or close your eyes, that's it. So you can do it at home, in your office. You know, you have 10 minutes between two appointments. Just shut your door, close your eyes, and there you are. So time is not difficult. And second is, when you meditate, your efficiency picks up, which you will realize over time. So the job which I could do in 1 hour, now I save 10 minutes in every job. So over a period of a day, I end up sparing a couple of hours, which would have normally taken longer, because your efficiency picks up. So automatically time gets created. So I don't think time is an issue. It's about getting your priorities right.
Another common question we encounter is, I will do all this when I retire. What is your take on that?
Okay. This is again what we've been trained, like Grahast, your childhood, then Grahast ashram, then when you go old, it's time to give up everything and go to the Himalaya kind of thing. I started at the age of, say, 37, I think, 36, 37. I felt I'm late. I should have done this long back and I would have benefited more out of this. So it's a very wrong concept to do it late, because sometimes you realize you're really late and you've not got the benefit of it as much you should have. I think you should start as early as 15, 16. And that will help mold your life better. So never put it off later, because it will help you in your spiritual as well as your material life. It will help you in your regular job also. It's going to improve your performance. It's going to improve your income. It's going to improve every aspect of your well-being that Abhirami spoke about. The 8 spokes, the occupational, the financial, the social, emotional, everything will align itself. So do not delay it for later.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions?
Maybe Harish Bhaiya, can you please explain on the lifestyle changes once a person, like when a person start meditating? Maybe that's where the question is, why not after retirement?
Okay.
Is there any lifestyle changes that I have to do when I start meditating?
No, the question she's asking, is there any lifestyle changes with meditation? I think with meditation you gain a lot, and I can give you few things which I have gained, which I think everybody can gain, and if you start late, it will not happen. One is you lose anger. Anger is the thing that destroys humanity. All the problems that stem into humanity is from fear and anger. Because fear causes anger. So once you start meditating, you start living the moment. You start living for the now. So you stop worrying about what the future is going to be, and you stop looking at the past. The entire human life, if you see, is based on 2 aspects: looking at your past, thinking of the present. And we miss what is right there. So that is the major change that occurs in you. Your fear goes down. Your fear of uncertainty, because we're all living in this uncertain world, which is called the VUCA world. You must have heard of this word, very commonly, loosely used by the so-called elitist, VUCA. Volatile, uncertain, complicated, right? And not clear, ambidextrous. So all this gets corrected with meditation. You start feeling centered. You start feeling in control of your life. You feel that there is meaning to your life, and that's the major thing that occurs. And of course, this also reflects on your eating habits. You eat better, you think better, your thoughts get more refined, you look at life more positively, and automatically you start physically feeling better, because you start taking care of your physical self too, which you normally don't do. So that's the major thing that changes around you. Has someone read The Secret? The book Secret? Yeah, I can see an hand up. And that beautifully says that what you give out to the world is the world gives back to you. And that's what meditation teaches you. You change from being selfish to selfless. You go from selfish to being empathetic. You become compassionate. You become a giver, and that's the major change that comes in. And the joy of giving far exceeds the joy of receiving. I mean, everybody must have tried this. Right? Okay. Anything else? Any questions?
So, this is Vineet here.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. So my question is on more of research point of view.
Okay.
Said that gut GIT.
Yeah.
It is said as a second brain of our body.
Right.
And I have not heard about heart, but
Right.
heart is a second mind.
Right.
So, and it in some cases it may take over brain functions, as in like if you are eating well, it takes over the brain functions also, and it is independent of brain. So,
Yeah.
what's your take on that? And
Right. Okay. So gut also has a nervous system, but the gut is again controlled by the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves that come out from the heart. So effectively, that is in a way connected to the heart itself. And if you know a little bit about heart diseases, there's an overlap between heart and gut problems. And many people who have a heart attack complain of a feeling of gas, a feeling of bloating. And then you go to your doctor and he says you've suffered a heart attack, your ECG is showing that. So gut and heart are very interrelated. And actually, if you ask me, it's basically the heart which controls the gut. It's just the sensation is felt in the gut. And that's why you call my gut says so. But actually, it's your heart saying that.
thank you, sir.
I have a question. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're very much audible.
But actually, just like now you were talking about the anger. Like when we practice meditation, we lose anger.
Yeah.
But sometimes it happens that you don't want to get angry, and certain things are there. So you just feel like that, and you also know that you should not get angry. But when you get angry, the work will be done. so in that case, what to do?
Okay. Now, there is a very beautiful thing about this, what you said. Getting angry and being angry. They're two different things. If you get angry without being consumed with anger and get your job done, then that anger is not anger. But if the anger is consuming you and you are irritated to the extent that your life is going down, that is being angry. So you have to differentiate between getting angry and being angry. I get angry without being angry inside. Beautiful. What's the point of being soft on the face and being anger inside? So try to understand the difference. So if you get angry without being angry, you can get your job done. But I'm telling you, the way of getting job done is out of pure love. That job gets done much faster. And it will continue. After some time, people get scared of anger for some time, and then their fear goes off of anger. But the impact the love leaves can never go. You cannot, what do you say, develop acclimatization to love. Love never is going to stop, it's not going to stop affecting you. But anger, after some time, you realize that some students stop listening to you. Or the staff stops listening to you if you keep getting angry at them. So try not to get angry. And that's the best way, and it comes automatically with meditation. It's going to, getting anger is a response which the man who's getting you angry enjoys it. If you're getting angry, the purpose of that person is done. He's got what he wanted.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, there's a beautiful saying that get anger towards yourself, direct it towards yourself for self-improvement. Don't use it on others to make them better. You can't change the world, you can only change yourself. The moment you change yourself, the world changes with you. Because you attract same kind of people automatically. Right?
Yes.
Are we done? Anything else?
Yeah, I think we are done because it's 12:30 now.
So you want to close the session? You can request the principal to close it.
Good afternoon to one and all. Respected speaker, Dr. Harish Mehta sir, Principal Dr. Shubha Nayak ma'am, Vice Principal Professor C.D. Bhosle sir, and Dr. Rajashree Ghorpade ma'am, HODs of all the departments and my dear colleagues. It gives me an immense pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. I, Archana Salunke, on behalf of Rayat Shikshan Samstha's Karmali Bhaurao Patil College, Vashi, would like to express sincere thanks to Speaker Dr. Harish Mehta sir, who spent his busiest time enlightening our mind on account of International Yoga Day. Sir, today we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on yoga, mind and heart. So you very well briefed us how yoga is not only about asanas, but yoga is about balancing your senses, your body, your soul and your mind. We all are inspired by your great words to live life healthy and in peace. A special mention to our principal, ma'am Dr. Shubha Nayak, who stand as a pillar of power. I would also like to express my gratitude to our vice principals, Professor C.D. Bhosle sir and Rajashree Ghorpade ma'am for their guidance. I am also grateful to all the participants for their patience and support. I am also thankful to Heartfulness Wellness team and all the members of Self-Development Program Committee for organizing the session. And last not but the least, technical support given by the technical team throughout the session. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Right. Abhi, we can finish.
Yes, Bhaiya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.